Hello, my name is Alan Augustin, and I worked on Nightfall, the animated short. I had the idea of doing the short back in 1996. I was working on a Batman animated series short at the time, and I was heavily influenced by the animated series. But I didn't want to start Nightfall then because I was starting up college, and also the technologies weren't right at the time. I knew I didn't want to do the animation with my current tools. I was using DOS at the time, but I eventually started once the technologies matured and became accessible to a Windows system. I was listening to the movie soundtrack to Batman Mask of the Phantasm back in '96, and this one piece called Batman's Destiny had a great part in it that made me think that would be great to do a Nightfall animation too. It was dramatic and epic and sympathetic, and it had a lot of build-up, and it was also relentless and foreboding at the same time. So, in pre-production, I decided to reread the Nightfall story, so I bought the 3 graphic novels that make up the story, so the comic story provided the largest influence on my animation. I started just drawing in my animation program, roughing out ideas, choosing the right scenes from the graphic novels that I wanted to portray in the short. My first attempts weren't anything to look at, but it was all about just getting the ideas down at the time. I had the idea clear in my head already. I did a few sketches for the characters that I would be using, and I eventually imported them into the animation program so they can get my color palette down in the program and just pull colors from there if I ever doubted my color scheme. Eventually I developed a process for making production faster as well as easily editable, just in case I needed to go back and redo things. So basically I started with a rough animation with basic form, then I refined that form by putting in details of the main characters and then cleaning up the lines. After that I copied those cells to a new layer so that I can flood fill them with base colors of the characters. Then I'd make another copy of the outline cells and use a semi-transparent tool to add shading to the characters. Then I would just do a background in a 2D paint program and slap it in the back, add some special effects, and presto. There were a few scenes that needed special attention to layer ordering too. I had to make sure some scene elements were overlapping properly so that it would convince the viewer into believing the depth of the scene. Sometimes an arm or a leg of a character needed to be added separately because it was underneath another character and it ended up not looking right. And there were also some instances where the background would have to interact with the foreground, which was also another problem that was solved through layer ordering. So for instance, I would layer it from back to front as I started with a background sketch, then I put in the rushing water and also the water from the pipes, then I threw in some falling bricks. Killer Croc goes down, Bane goes down, then Killer Croc's overlay leg over Bane, then Robin falls, more bricks, and then the final scene. And finally, the backgrounds themselves took quite a bit of time to create. I used the layering technique as I did in the 2D animation program. First I sketched out the basic physical environment of the scene in the animation program just to get the rough idea of the elements that the character will interact with. Then I would import that still frame into the paint program. I'd create another few layers for each major element in the background and create basic geometric shapes in these base layers. After that, I created another set of layers for adding texture to the basic shapes. Then I created another set of layers for the detailed shapes for each base shape. For windows and other geometric structures, I create another layer just as a guide for creating windows so that the windows follow proper perspective. After all that's done, the final layers would be for adding dramatic lighting and shadows. It was hard to stay focused near the end of the project. By then it's like I had doubts of whether or not it'd be good, whether or not I should keep going. Several times I was sidetracked by things during the production, just like ordinary life stuff, and I was even tempted to go back to other projects. But I kept myself going by keeping toys and Batman memorabilia around me, stuff that family and friends had given to me, in addition to some works of my own to fuel my motivation. I also kept a spreadsheet of what scenes had been done and what hadn't been done, and I'd fill it out as I went along, and I had followed the spreadsheet right to the very end through 8 long months of work. If finishing the project wasn't enough to convince me I was done, filling in all those zeros in my spreadsheet was. So that's how I did Nightfall, and I'm glad I completed it, and I'm glad I did it because I think Nightfall is one of those Batman stories that everyone should know about. I feel that it's just as much a part of the Batman legend as the death of his parents. It's about the fall of a city's hero and his redemption from not only his physical breakdown, but also from the monster he trusted to take his place. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed Nightfall as much as I enjoyed making it.